spreading the message of hope to everyone. We are Hope 103.1 FM Grenada. You are listening to Hope 103.1 FM. Keep it locked.
Chosen generation, we've been called for to show His excellence. All I require for life, God has given me, and I know who I am. We are a chosen generation, we've been called for to show His excellence. All I require for life, God has given me. Oh, I know who I am. I know who God says I am. What He says I am. Where He says I'm at. I know who I am. I know who God says I am. What He says I am.
Happy New Year. Blessed afternoon to all listeners locked on to Hope on a 3.1 FM. I pray God's finest blessing upon all listeners locked on. I pray that your year will be productive and full of the presence of the Lord, yeah? We are here another season with godly sound communication and conversation on the topic leadership with none other than Reverend John Lewis. And Leadership Plus is an initiative taken by him. He is the director of GITE, Canada Institution for Theological Education. And he's also a teacher and trainer and speaker with the John Maxwell team. Also an independent certified coach. So as the people would say it locally, it's not no fly-by-night conversation. Sound. I hope you have grown as much as I have grown over the past 26 or 25 plus sessions. And we're here for another wonderful conversation. I invite you to post your comments on our YouTube platform and or across our WhatsApp. You can send them in on 4031. Your comments, your questions, and we'll attend to them as best as possible, yeah? Good afternoon, Reverend John, and how are you today?
Good day and Happy New Year. It's good to be back. The short break, and we wish everyone God's blessed favor and grace upon their lives throughout the year. And we trust that you will find this discussion very informative and will cause you to grow in your own leadership and leadership development as well.
Okay, Reverend John, how was the Christmas holidays? I hope you enjoyed it.
It was very good after a couple of years of lockdown.
Right.
It was a good break here in Grenada, where we're able to celebrate a little bit more with family and friends.
Right. We're looking at the new year 2022, just about 5 days have gone by so far, but any tips on the trajectory of what type of leadership is needed for 2022?
Well, one of the courses that I'm currently involved in is called Managing Change.
Mm-hmm.
And change is going to be an important discussion for, well, previously, but more so for the year ahead, and how we manage it so it doesn't take us by surprise. And one of the opportunities that we have is to communicate on these platforms in terms of the new changes and opportunities that we can have to communicate principles on leadership and personal growth and development.
Great. Right. So today we're looking forward to another informative session as we discuss and share under the topic leading different personalities. And, when we're looking and preparing at the text, I couldn't help but think about Jesus because, he is the perfect exemplar. And, when he would have gathered the men and would have spoken at disciples, of course, and he would have spoken to Peter, James, and John, he might have spoken to them differently than he did to the remaining disciples and or crowds. So I see God's wisdom, in speaking differently, recognizing that there is differences in everyone. And today we're talking about differences and working and leading different personalities. I can't help to see my God was and is emotionally intelligent. Can you take us through today's topic?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So our discussion today will focus on leading different personalities, how to connect with people who follow you. Mm-hmm. And the foundation for this discussion today is basically in three initial discussions points. One is that people should be different. This is the beauty of how people are being made. Mm-hmm. And then there is value in our differences, the differences, balance, weaknesses that you have. And then thirdly, their personalities won't change. Personalities don't fundamentally change. Mm-hmm. And when the leader fails to understand and relate to the different personalities within the organization, there are bound to be difficulties with the persons that you are associated with, and that problems can result. But a lack of understanding and appreciation for the different people, the different personalities that we work with.
Right.
So there are some goals for our discussion today. One is to develop an awareness of the different personalities, mm-hmm. develop an appreciation for the different personalities that we work with, an awareness. So there's a difference between awareness and appreciation. We can be aware and yet not being appreciative of the different personalities that we work with. Thirdly, develop an effective plan to work with different personalities. Mm-hmm. And then fourthly, develop a team with a variety of personalities who share a common vision and values. So those are the goals for our discussion. We may not get to all these goals in one session. This is a very involved presentation today. This may take us over into a follow-up session when we look at the material and the information we would like to cover. Right. So good leaders recognize the influence, the personalities, and the spiritual gifts of the people. And so today we want to look at they are described differently with different writers and authors. For example, in this discussion, we will look at the 4 basic personality types from an older version, which was normally used earlier on, but writers and authors who have used different methods and means to communicate different styles of people. So for our purpose today, we will look at what is considered the popular sanguine, secondly, the perfect melancholy, thirdly, the proverbial powerful choleric, and then the peaceful phlegmatic. So those are 4 basic types that are being used, but there are different ways that people have described these kinds of personalities in terms of using, for example. Another profile that people use is what they call influencing, dominance, cautious, or steadiness. One couple authors, Morley and Trent, use a figurative speech in the sense of using the names of animals like the otter, the lion, the beaver, the golden retriever. And then Larry Crabb, he classified these 4 types as emotional, volitional, rational, and personal. And then Alexander and Cathcart describes them as a socializer, a director, a thinker, a relator. And then Merrill Wright styles as expressor, driving, analytical, and amiable. So there are at least 6 different ways that personalities have been categorized. And the comparisons in these different styles, and people would relate in terms of how they connect with these different personality models. But we would focus on the version today that describes the popular sanguine. And we look at some of the characteristics that fit this person. They want everything to be fun and are energized by people. So as we said, this type of personality is very fun-loving. It's very involved with the people. Is usually described as he is the life of the party, as they describe him or her. The work space is a bit messy with clutter and collections. So they are not the best organizer, but they often crave people activity and conversation. So they are very much involved in activities. They have a lot of friends and they love to have a lot of conversations. And another flip side to this is that they can be self-centered. So the focus is on who they are as people. And their motto is pay attention to me. And they tend to have this trait in them as the center of attention. And so it has both strengths and weaknesses in each personality type.
That is the sanguine personality.
Right, that is described here as the sanguine.
Right. So listeners, pay attention as we call out the different traits or under each personality, and you may find yourself in 1 or 2 or 3 of them, as I found myself in quite a few of them. So I'll probably just run over the points under the sanguine. They want everything to be fun and are energized by people. Their workspace is a bit messy with clutter and collections. They often crave people, activity, and conversation. They can be self-centered. Reverend John mentioned that they have a lot of friends. Their motto is "Look at me." Were there 2 other additions you mentioned, Reverend?
Right. Well, that was just amplifying the ideas about their activity and people. So that's, and there's a dominant personality type, but there's also a secondary personality type in most people. So the second type we want to look at today, it is what is described as the perfect melancholy. They think anything we're doing is we're doing right. So they tend to be very much detailed in what they do. Their workspace is tidy, unlike the sanguine. So we see some differentiation. Everything is in its place for the melancholy. They know where to find the needle in the stack of hay because they are so organized. They know where to find every file. They know where to find every little bit of information. They are detailed and are energized by thinking. So they do spend a lot of time thinking and planning, organizing, and they're good managers. They're good project thinkers and planners. They often are a bit moody, so they could have very high and low changes in their mood. They can be, the motto is, please understand me. So they're seeking affirmation in what they do. They're very much driven by people's appreciation for what they do and the affirmation from others. They look forward to that. So that's described as a perfect melancholy. So that's their trait. They very much organized and very much detailed in what they do. And thirdly, the powerful cleric. They want to be in charge, so they're the boss. Driven attitude about themselves. They're strong and energized by setting goals. Their workspace reflects more function than form. So it doesn't matter how their desks look. They have better than the madness, as we would say. They want results and want it done their way. So they're very self-opinionated, and they tend to be, their motto is to do it my way. They can be demanding and impatient because they basically have a one-track kind of thinking in how things ought to be. So as we look through these, you will see the differences in the types of people that you have to work with within your organization, within your church. And then fourthly, and we'll come back to some discussions on this. This one is called the peaceful phlegmatic. They're easygoing, peaceful, happy, relaxed. Their workspace is informal and simple. They would rather not be involved in causing conflict. They avoid that. They may miss deadlines and fail to reach goals because they're in no hurry to get things done. And their motto is, what difference will it make? So right away, you see the direct contrast between the phlegmatic and the melancholy. You see the differences between all four types of people. So the discussion will talk about how do you, first of all, understand the different types of people that you work with, have an appreciation for the strengths and the weakness, and how do you create a workspace that conflict, because there's an understanding of the differences of the personality types that you work with within your church, within a company, within an organization. And the lack of an understanding and appreciation for the differences of people, basically we are made that way in a predominant personality type and a secondary personality type. And then it's how to navigate the path of working with these different kinds of persons, because each type of person, each personality type bring strengths as they also bring their weakness as well to working within a company or organization. And so there's some
open up by saying
yes.
The text open up. I was just echoing the sentiment that you just shared, that it's important to recognize the input of each personality type and to see where the weaknesses are, where the strengths are. For we know that a mature leader, understand the differences, can read and can, lead people much better when he or she understands the different personality.
Great. So here's some effective ways to connect with these personality types. For the sanguine, give them attention and approval. So that helps them to to have a sense of their own worth and value. And then for the melancholic person, recognize their emotional need of order and sensitivity. So they are the kind of person that tends to have a lot of order, and they're very sensitive to the people that they work with. For the cleric, communicate your appreciation for their work. They are driven people, and for most part, they take a lot of initiative, and very often because they tend to be sometimes brash, people do not show appreciation for their work. But in order to have an environment that provides productivity and learning and growth, we have to express appreciation for that type of personality. And then for the phlegmatic, learn to respect them. Of course, in the midst of their strengths and weaknesses, of course, each personality would expect respect for who they are as individuals. One of the challenges that we'll find in leadership is that we tend to have a sort of general view of people, and we will come to a discussion point where when we are building teams, that is going to be important to have different types of personality working on a team. For example, I mean, just naturally, if you have a team of one type of personality, for example, if it's a team of phlegmatics, you probably wouldn't get very much done because their motto is, what difference will it make? They are not hurry into meeting deadlines. In the same way, if you want to have a team full of the people who are sanguine in their personality, you probably have a lot of fun, but perhaps you have a lot of entertainment, a lot of laughter, a lot of activity without being productive. On the side of the melancholy, they want everything done perfect. And so it would take much longer, of course, to get things done. And they want to have an understanding that they could be up and down, so the moods could go up and down. For the choleric, they want to be in charge. So, but imagine you have a team of people.
Else, yes, that could be something else.
Right. And everyone wants to be the boss. It's going to create so much conflict. So it's going to be critical. Very often we try to build teams by volunteerism, especially in the church community, where there's a particular project on its particular need, and normally our response to finding help is to ask anyone who wants to help, and and you take everybody that raised their hand without any further assessment of the persons that have volunteered, and only to find out in the process that there's so much tension and conflict and misunderstanding that unfortunately sometimes we don't get to complete an assignment or project that we wanted to get done.
Before we go on, because of the presence of different personalities, should a leader be at all concerned with the way he presents information, that should cater to the need of each personality? Or, is it a case where he just communicates according to his style, and whoever the personality interpreted, that's their issue? Or should he or she, the leader, be concerned with communicating in a way that each personality can engage the information correctly?
Great. So that takes the skill of a good leader to understand the people that are within his group, organization, because we may need to communicate a particular concept in different ways to different types of people. so that they understand it very well. For example, if you want to reach out to a phlegmatic person, and you come down very brash and hard on this person, that person may just quit and figure that you calling them out rather than being sensitive to what their needs are. So one of the exercises that we would do within our training is to let people work through an exercise and look at these characteristics. And like you said, you looked at these characteristics and you have determined that you fall within this particular style or this particular personality type. And you may see yourself in one or two or more of them, but each person has a dominant style, a dominant style of performance. So here's some questions about personality type. Which ones are the most natural leaders? And so the answer to that, of course, is the choleric. They take action, they make decision, but also the melancholy, because these people are very much organized and they get things done right. Which ones are the most natural followers? Well, the phlegmatic tend to follow, and the sanguine as well. They tend to be more followers than leaders. Which ones cause the most problem? It is suggested that the melancholy could cause the problem because they are so detailed, they are so meticulous, they are perfectionists, and that's a weakness actually. So that could create problems for the phlegmatic and the choleric as well. The choleric personality type would just brush past everybody and get on. It's like a bull. It is described in a discussion as a bulldozer. Just goes in and mows down everything. Which ones are the most loyal naturally? The phlegmatic. That's interesting because they're peaceful, they're happy, they are relaxed, they are very informal, and so they tend to be very faithful and loyal. Which ones are the most naturally gifted? It is suggested in melancholy. Their workspace is tidy, they are detailed, they want to do things well. Which are the ones most work? Which one is the most loved naturally? Well, everybody loves the sanguine personality type. They love fun, they love company, they love people, conversation, activity. Which one influences most naturally? Of course, the choleric. And do some have a mix of personality type? Of course. Yes, most people do have a mix. So as you listen to the pointers or descriptors of these types of personalities, perhaps you're listening, taking notes of yourself, and I could identify within in one or two of these types of personalities. So if you are sanguine in the personality profile, you're influencing, according to Smalley and Trent, you are likened to an otter. And Larry Crabb says that you're emotional, you're socializer, and expressive, which shows the comparisons of these different types of personality. So there are some guidelines of how to lead these personalities. The first thing, of course, the priority here is to know reality. Of course, if you do not know who you are and do not understand how you function, you really cannot lead another person. You must understand and lead yourself before you lead anyone else.
Yeah,
So,
when I read that point, it led me to remember the verse, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And I think if I explain it correctly, if I'm not, let me know. But you have to be able to love yourself properly. And then you'll be able to love others properly, understand yourself as a human being. You're already in a better position to understand somebody else. So it's, as you said, I read some time back, John Maxwell, he said, you have to learn to lead yourself before you could lead and manage anyone else, as you rightfully pointed out in a previous session, where you say you must analyze
discussion.
yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Analyze yourself, know who you are before you can read and so others.
Great. And then, secondly, recognize the personality of your ministry organization. Each church and organization possess its own personality and strength. That's interesting. So, when you look at your company, your organization, um, there's a particular personality that describes how you function. And so we need to understand the dominance of the leadership in particular, and then learn the different personalities of your team. We made reference to that. If we do not understand the differences of our team's personalities, um, good leaders identify the style of their staff, their volunteers, and board members and leaders. And that is, we cannot overstate that. Because if you were to bring, for example, a choleric person and a phlegmatic person, and you're communicating a message to these different types of personalities, it can motivate one person and it can create conflict for the other person, depending on how the message is communicated. Because of the types and the characteristics that describe them. We must fill team positions by personality. I think we made that point. Certain positions require various strengths, and so we have to match the person's strength with the task. Very often we do not take the time to do this. And you can see if you assign a task to someone who doesn't have the ability to organize and to plan, for example, the person doesn't have the skills of or the strengths of a melancholic person. And this person is more likely to be phlegmatic, may not the best person to put in a leadership position. But we can only determine that if we do an exercise that can help us bring to the front which dominant personality each member of your team has. So that is a critical role. Because unless this happens, what tends to follow is that a person does not have the strength to complete a particular task or function and gets criticized for not fulfilling a particular role. But that responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the leader, making a wrong choice of person. Of course, you can build a team of people assigning responsibilities. The leadership kinds of people tend to be those who are choleric and those who are melancholic. Of course, you need people who love fun as well. If you have, like we mentioned earlier, if you have a team full of so well organized and people on task, that it can be very difficult and challenging. So when you have a mix of these personality types. It creates a balance within an organization or within a leadership team.
Right. Reverend John,
And then place team
before you go on, you mentioned we were talking about the different personality traits, and you mentioned that there might be an individual who, do not do too well with harsh corrections, right?
Yes.
Is it
Yeah.
possible that that individual can develop the capacity to, handle harsh communications, or is it that the traits, it remains unchanged in the individual, or can they be trained to handle, in their weak area?
Well, the thing is that we are naturally wired in personality as a dominant role.
Mm-hmm.
So we do not necessarily can manufacture um, a particular strength or weakness within the personality type.
Okay.
The challenge is that for the person to be aware and the leader to be aware of what strengths or weakness that people bring. Because one of the weaknesses of leadership is trying to change our personality type.
Right.
uh, the, the
Mm-hmm.
moment that you get onto that track of saying, oh, we could change this person. You could try your entire life,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not who they are. What we seek to stress is the strength of the person,
Right.
and so we develop, hone the strengths of the person, and then we fill the weakness, fill the gaps.
Right.
So what tends to happen in a team of people or in an organization where it is good leadership is you match strengths with we fill the weakness with the strengths of others.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, if for example the sanguine is not very time conscious, they can finish whenever they think is okay. But you have a melancholy person on the team, and they would say, "Look,
Organized.
there's a
Right.
deadline here,"
Yeah.
and so yeah, how to build strong teams together.
Mm-hmm.
So you fill the team um, with the strengths of other personalities,
Okay.
and then motivate your team members according to their personality.
Mm-hmm.
The three primary motivators: achieving a goal, being together, influencing a team. So your role as a leader is to motivate each different personality type.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no better than kind of personality type.
Right. Right.
Each personality type is significant,
Mm-hmm.
and they are made in that way
Mm-hmm.
because they fulfill a particular role and function. And it is not to compare one personality type against the other, but rather to complement
Right.
each personality type working together. And once we understand that, we can accomplish a lot more. So it does not become competitive, but it rather becomes complementary as well.
Yes. I was
Uh,
while reading those points, like, I couldn't help wonder, of course, Jesus is the best exemplar or the best leader. So I couldn't help wonder if he did that when he was pairing the disciples, when he sent them out. I said, I wonder if, I haven't done any theological studies on that. I don't know, but if you
right,
can
sure.
talk on it, sure. But I wondered if he did that when he paired the guys together to send them out.
Well, the truth about this, because Jesus is divine and we are not,
Yes, yes,
of course, he would know them from inside out
yeah.
and know how they would work together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so people have described the disciples by reading how they have written,
Mm-hmm.
learning for the experiences.
Mm-hmm.
For example, they would describe Peter as a choleric person
Right.
because he was rushed to decisions. He was
True.
always um, making decisions, cutting off people's ears. you know, very, very brash and stuff like that. But people refer to people like John as more of a melancholic kind of person,
Okay.
very affectionate.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
writes a lot about love, of course, in his
Yes.
books, the
Yes.
epistles. So people have described the personalities in different ways because of the way they have communicated and the way they have shared their stories
Yeah.
and the experiences they've had. Um, like we had the Sons of Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so they're choleric kind of personality.
Okay.
Of course, Paul the Apostle, people would describe him as very detailed and very meticulous about how he is writing.
Very
And
good.
so they would describe him as having a melancholy kind
Maybe
of
because of his
personality
legal
from the
background.
of course. And then, of course, he was very orderly in what he did. If you read through his writings,
Mm-hmm.
you'll notice the sequence in which he writes very carefully.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Luke, who was a physician, Dr. Luke,
Yeah.
very detailed, a lot of the stories that were written by the writers, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Luke is much more detailed in
Right.
terms of the different aspects that may have been left out by other writers.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal of a leader is not to discourage, but to motivate
Mm-hmm.
um, of the people. So, for example, if a leader gets up and start to point out all the weaknesses of all the personalities, I think everybody may leave the room, and you may not have a team, but rather we accentuate the strength of each person on the team. And then we still have to be careful not to label people. The successful leader will know the personality will be displayed in a certain situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, one, this is very important here. So, although we have a particular personality type as dominant, is mentioned also, you can have um, different character traits from other types of personality um, that are part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And teach your team about the different personalities. Your team members should also recognize personality strengths as they form their team. So teach your team about the different personalities so that each member of your team understand that we are different, we are unique, but we all are involved in team building. And this is a good team building exercise that can happen in a small organization or large organization.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very involved and a detailed exercise that a company, an organization can encourage their members to participate in. Because what it does, it creates a better environment, creates a better atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
an appreciation of working with people of different strengths and weaknesses. And then form teams with complementary strengths and personalities. When you form teams to perform a task, be sure you have various strengths on that team. Okay, so again, building a team is a skill that the leader would have honed and developed. And so a team is not just thrown together arbitrarily.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the best way um, to form teams is to be more selective and do exercises of a group of people before putting a team together, rather than people who would just want to volunteer to be part of the team, as we mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Complementary strengths of the team and lead others from their personality type. The law of connection. Leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand. So you lead others because of their personality type that they bring to the group or to the organization. And you
Yeah.
know how to place them in particular functions. For example, if you're looking for a detailed person, after you have done a review of the person, going through the exercise of determining, and people will affirm to you, well, this is part of my character. This is one of the characteristics, or several of these characteristics describe me. And so I have more dominant role in this particular personality style or type. So for example, if you're looking for someone who you need to have detailed reporting to, the personality type of the melancholic person would fit that particular role. You do not want to give that role to a phlegmatic. The phlegmatic person may not satisfy that need, but in the same vein of thinking, a eucharistic person, a role that it is a role that is informal, not too involved, and they tend to bring a balance within groups of people that are brash and almost hard to work with. They tend to bring a balance of peace and harmony. They are the peacemakers within your team. So when there's conflict and when misunderstanding and when everybody is blowing up, they're the ones that just cool down the temperature. Yeah. And every team needs somebody like that in order to function.
Yeah.
Yes. So those are some of the critical areas that we have looked at.
Yeah. So, I know, looking at these points while reading them, I said to myself, again, that point you made in several episodes before, leadership is not for the weak in heart. You know, and several terms jumped out at me that a leader has to be strategic. He has to be very keen. He has to be able to read and then manage that information so tactfully and so wisely. Again, leadership is really not for the weak in heart. You know, you must be on top of things, understand yourself, and then be able to understand others, and then place others to in the kingdom, if it's in a church organization or so, you know, how to fulfill the kingdom's business. Yeah. It's a very interesting and informative session. And listeners, if you want to send in any comments or questions, you can send them on our YouTube platform. If you're listening on the radio and you're not logged on our live session, you can send in your comments and or questions on 403-1031. And we're talking leadership or leading different personalities and how to connect with the people who follow you. All right. So Reverend John, can you continue?
Sure. So there's a summary chart here that we'll look at as well. So as we said, most people are a combination of these personality types, and we usually have a primary and secondary type with our personalities. So the description of the cleric, they're people mover, they get things done. Their work traits, as we said, they're goal oriented, they act very quickly. The basic style is directing, they're in charge, and under pressure, they can become bossy or impatient. That's the cleric. The sanguine description, they seek recognition. Their work traits, they're people oriented. They're very much involved with people and their values and thinking. They're energetic, full of energy and inspiring. And you need people like that on your team. The basic style is interacting. They love communication. They love to talk to people. They love to relate and understand people. Under pressure, they become emotional, and that's where the mood changes. Under pressure, though they can be optimistic in spite of pressure. The phlegmatic is a very cooperative kind of group. They don't give too much trouble. They kind of roll with the punch, as we say. They're team oriented. They're steady in what they do. The basic style, they provide stability to your team. Under pressure, they slow down, they get a little sulky or a little impatient. And the melancholy, they are much more reserved and they tend to be perfectionists. They love numbers, the figures, they plan, they love to strategize, love to organize, but they are cautious still in the midst of what they do. And then under pressure, they can be very overcritical because of the perfectionist trait in them. And they can be very strict in terms of adhering to rules and regulations. But somebody has to do that, right?
Definitely.
And then under pressure, under conflict response, the choleric tend to be on the attack. If they're going through a period of conflict, their response could be to attack. And the favorite biblical word is fruitful. They like to produce. They like to see growth. They resist criticism. So be careful how you criticize Cleric personality type. Be careful how you frame your words when being critical of a choleric person. Change, they create the change. They make the change. They love innovation and they are involved in basic fear being taken advantage of. So in spite of the boldness and brashness, it's almost like a paradox that they fear that people will take advantage of them. In terms of the sanguine, the response to conflict is they try to sell you. Salesmanship is a trademark of the sanguine personality. They can sell ice to the Eskimos. They could sell you anything basically. The favorite word is joy. They are happy, tend to be happy most of the time, joyful, strongly resist rejection. They do not like when they are not accepted. The ideas, they talk about ideas. The change, they like to change the change. So they will come up in conflict with the choleric if we're not careful. The choleric creates the change, and they want to change the change. And the basic fear is social disapproval. So you have to handle the sanguine with care. Handle them with care. In terms of the conflict response for the phlegmatic, they bend to authority, easygoing, so they're not going to confront authority. Their favorite word, biblical word, is peace. Let there be peace on earth and goodwill to all men. So they're peace loving, and then they resist sudden changes. Do not throw changes on them suddenly. They don't handle it well. And ideas, they work consistently. Of course, they're slow to change, but when they do change, they work consistently. The basic fear is loss of security. So you want to give them a sense of security. Melancholy, the conflict response is withdraw to come back and fight. So they may not confront you right away, but they gone home to prepare for you next time. We probably know people like that in your group. Yes. Yes, and then the favorite word is truth. They are very, very strong and upholding truth, honesty, integrity. Those are some of their traits. And then they resist criticism of work and ideas. So be careful how you criticize this person. Ideas show the work to do the work right. So they are very careful in completing things that are well done. Change them. You have to justify why are you changing. They want reasons why you're making change, and why they must accept these change. Basic
They are less
fear,
spontaneous.
imperfection. Right. So they're not spontaneous like the sanguine. The imperfection, disorganization. So they cannot deal with disorganization. They have a challenge with that. But so of course you would see where they would come up in conflict against the phlegmatic person who is not so well organized, and even the sanguine who is not as well organized. So it just gives you a spectrum of how people are in terms of leading them and understanding them as strong, independent people, but where they bring their strengths with them and their weaknesses as well. And here, as a leader of these types of people, you meet them everywhere. People are categorized in one predominant area, one of these four areas. Of course, there's a secondary trait, as we mentioned, that we cannot necessarily put them in a particular specific, but you can see which traits characterize them more than others. And so the question for the discussion is, what is your personality? What are the personalities on your team? So I trust that as you listen today, that you can in some ways identify yourself in one of these four categories, whether you are choleric, sanguine, phlegmatic, or melancholy. And of course, you would have a mix. What is your secondary personality trait? And then list one action you can take to connect with each member of your team. So this is, of course, most of us work with teams or groups of people, organizations, companies. So this is a good exercise that you can practice with your people as well, and have a further. This material is available elsewhere, and it can be sourced, of course, on other platforms, that and the different types of exercises that can help you determine the personality types, both of yourself and of all the team members that you work with.
You know, a question comes to mind. Is it wise that a person choose their career path based on their personality type?
Well, you will bring that personality to bear upon the type of work that you do best. It's in a similar way, your personality type would influence and affect the kind of work that you do. For example, if you are in a secretarial role where the demand is for accuracy and a lot of detail and deadlines, then of course the person who has a phlegmatic personality type may not fit that role.
True.
And you may frustrate your employer. And so you want to be selective in terms of how you fit in a particular role and function, in terms of career and choosing your life path. And so there are particular things that you're strong in. You have strengths in particular field of your personality. Of course, this is tied to your natural talents, as we talked about, I think, previously. Your natural talents and your giftings that you're made with. Giftedness is God-given, and each of us are gifted by God. And so you can determine what are those particular natural gifts that you have, and also in the context of what we discussed in terms of this discussion, what are the spiritual giftings? And you will find that there are comparisons, even as we wrap up. The person who is well organized, the cleric person, has the gift of administration, which is a spiritual gift, but also is a natural gift as well. So there are different ways that we can compare our natural gifts, our spiritual gifts, our personality type, that helps us to define who we are and how we can function as a leader.
Right. So today's discussion was very loaded. It reminded us that a leader must be versatile. He or she must be flexible, be able to read the people that they lead and rightfully assign. And though we've described different personality traits, none, it should be better. We shouldn't see, okay, this person is better than me or whatnot. God made us, as Reverend John just mentioned, perfectly, and there must be balance. We got to have some balance, as we pointed out in certain scenarios. You could imagine, a group of everybody who is powerful. I'm in charge, do it my way. You need to have someone who can balance off and cancel off some of the high-powered energy in the room. So we really appreciate today's conversation. And if you're a leader, you remember that you got to know yourself, understand who you are, and understand the people that you're leading, so that, of course, we can come to a good end or be able to meet the objectives set out by your organization. Reverend John, any final words before we close off today's session?
Great. Well, just to identify your own personality. That is going to be the starting point. Know what these traits mean to you. And you can review these, of course. And of course, to understand the people that are on your team, within your organization. Because the goal of this exercise is to create a sense of harmony and awareness and appreciation of what you do and how important your work is, so that we get the work done well. We are productive, because that's our prayer for you this year, that it'll be a very productive year. And this is a good starting point for our first discussion in this brand new year.
Yes, it was quite a good one. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to having you here on Leadership Plus in another session. That'll be next Wednesday at 5 p.m., God's will. So stay tuned and keep it locked onto Hope 103.1 FM. God bless you, and thanks for joining us. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.